Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons, helping KBC leaders flourish. My guest today is Lauren Parish, and I'm so excited about this interview because we're going to talk about children's ministry and Lauren's role. Lauren, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be here.
You are so welcome. Let me tell you about Lauren. Lauren Parish is in her 10th year of full-time ministry leadership and currently serves as Minister of Children at First Baptist in Bowling Green, Kentucky. She also served as a journeyman with the International Mission Board. She was on staff at Versailles Baptist Church, is an alumnus of Anderson University in Indiana, and is currently working on her Master of Theological Studies from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Lauren, let's just jump into these questions. Tell us how you became a Christian and then how you ended up in ministry leadership.
Sure. So I had the blessing of growing up in a Christian home with two believing parents. My mom is a children's minister, has been my whole life.
Oh, wow.
And so I was her little gopher everywhere that she went. And that was a joy for me. But when I was 8 years old, I chose to trust in Jesus. And I always remember that night because we had just come home from a Sunday service, and I asked Mom, what does saved mean? I need clarification on that. And so that always is a reminder in my mind as I teach kids to make sure that I'm giving definitions to everything, because even the most simple words might not quite click. It could come down to just a word. So I chose to follow Jesus when I was 8, and I followed that with believer's baptism. And my call to ministry, because I got to follow my mom in her ministry, it was just in me. It was in my blood. It was in my bones. And so it wasn't as much of a matter of if I was going to go into ministry, but when. My undergrad is in vocal performance, and so I thought I was going to get to go perform for a while first, and the Lord had other plans, and so I ended up going straight into ministry.
Yeah, so you went to school at Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana. Folks may not know that that's kind of the Gaither, Bill and Gloria Gaither College, and so are you from that area?
I'm not. I'm actually from Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, yeah. And so we heard you sing at the Logan County or Logan Baptist Association. Todd Logan did a kind of a crusade night, and you sang there with the praise team. You have an incredible gift and voice in that area as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's just talk about children's ministry. Lauren, children's ministry is one of the most crucial, yet sometimes overlooked areas of the church. Why is building a healthy children's ministry important to any local church, whether a staff person leads in that or a volunteer or a group of volunteers? Why is it so important?
You often hear the phrase that children are our future,
right.
But while that's not incorrect, children need to be thought of as our present.
Yeah.
This is the time where they are building those foundational truths in their lives. They're building their worldview, and they're going to build that worldview based on something. What is that something going to be? You know, I was reading statistics, and Barna Research Group says that between 15 and 18 months is when a child starts building their worldview, and by the age of 13, it is almost completely formed.
Wow.
I know, that blew my mind. And so we've got to decide, are we going to help our kids to look at the world through a biblical lens, or are they going to look at the Bible through a secular lens? We've got to decide that now. We don't have the luxury of waiting until they're adults to disciple them. We have to start now. Even the littlest learners can understand basic truths like Jesus loves me and Jesus is my friend and God made me. They can get those things, so we need to start early.
Yeah, so you're trying to shape a worldview. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Some unfortunately see children's ministry as just a kind of maybe a babysitting time, for lack of a better term, so the grown-ups can enjoy worship without maybe those distractions. But it's so much more than that. How do you define a healthy or an effective children's ministry? What does that look like for you, Lauren?
So a healthy children's ministry is going to start with solid teaching. We need to be teaching straight from the Bible, be teaching biblical truths, and helping kids to understand that it's not this boring book of history that the world makes it out to be. It's filled with so many exciting things. and it's filled with hope for them. So making sure that there's solid theology at the base of everything that we do. In a healthy children's ministry, you're going to see kids who are excited to go, excited to learn. You're going to have faithful leaders who are passionate about teaching the gospel to kids. We want to see parents who are discipling kids at home. We want to be the supplement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want the main core discipleship to be happening at home. We're not quite there yet, but that is the goal.
Yeah.
Consistent attendance now is only 1 to 2 times a month, but let's be excited that they're there even that much, and make sure that we're using every minute that we've got. The last thing I'd say is a unified ministerial team. If the whole ministry team is championing children's ministry from even the pulpit,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you've got a really healthy church and a healthy ministry.
So practically speaking, Lauren, you shared some important, maybe philosophical underpinnings of a healthy children's ministry. You want to see a unified staff view of it, a solid biblical foundation, parental involvement, teaching, worldview, and the like. What's a couple of practical things that you have tried that you have found helpful, and maybe something you tried that just didn't work at all?
So the way that our children's ministry is set up, we have something for preschoolers all the time. We've got Sunday school every week. When it comes to kids worship for kindergarten through 5th grade, we do that every other week. And the reason that we do that is it's so important for kids to have the opportunity to experience corporate worship, and for that to be a normal thing for them. And so it's really important that we have a balance between teaching kids at their level, giving them, hyped up music and telling them a story at their level, and games and memory verses and all of that. But they need to be able to watch their parents worship as well. That needs to become a normal in our society, instead of, oh man, I have to go to worship today, I want to go to kids worship. We don't want that for them. Right. We want them to be excited for both.
Lauren, I would just say part of my testimony, I grew up attending church. My dad wasn't part of that with us. He just didn't go, and he went hunting or fishing or did other things. He later gave his life to the Lord. But the few Sundays that he went when I was a child, those were like the highlights for me. It was just great to have Dad, and I was really proud to get to sit by him and see him in worship. I think that can't be stressed enough, the importance of children seeing their parents worship Jesus, sing the songs, give their tithes and offerings, greet people, amen the sermons, support the pastor and all those things. That really communicates to a small child at a pretty deep level.
Absolutely.
So what's something you tried in children's ministry? You've been at this for a while. Tell us something you tried that, I thought it was a good idea until I tried it.
Well, everything can work. If you just got to make some tweaks, that's okay. The thing that doesn't work is when you try to do something that really doesn't have any kingdom purpose.
Okay.
So we have to really evaluate what we're doing. If we're bringing children or even adults in for something that's fun, but we don't take the time to somehow tie it to the gospel, are we using our time wisely? Those things don't always work the way that we want them to. But I think with some tweaks, most things, as long as they're gospel focused, they can work.
So you're trying to help kids connect with solid biblical principles, who God is, what Jesus did for us on the cross, and relationship with Him, fellowship with Him. Lauren, oftentimes churches have trouble getting volunteers involved in any level of ministry, including children's ministry. What have you found to be an effective approach to building up a solid volunteer team?
I will say this is a worldwide problem. Yep. The problem of trying to get volunteers and keep volunteers is so tough. But I will say that one of the biggest things that I have learned is to contact people directly. If you do a mass call, even at my church, our pastor, Dr. Jeff Reynolds, he'll do a mass call from the pulpit. But if you contact people directly and they know I'm the one that she wants to serve in this role, they're far more likely to actually consider it, to actually pray about it. Because if we do a mass call, then they may think, oh, somebody else will answer that. Somebody else will say yes to that. It doesn't have to be me. And there was a church that I heard about that they asked their other leaders, who would you like to see up here with your kids? Who would you like to see teaching your kids and greeting your kids? And then based on those answers, they went and reached out to those people and said, your name came up today. Your name was suggested to be a part of this team.
Lauren, that is incredible advice, because it kind of harkens back to an older day in church life where that's the way leaders were chosen for roles. I mean, I'm old enough to remember in church business meetings when there wasn't a nominating committee or someone out reaching for volunteers, and someone would say, I think Bill's a great Sunday school teacher. He's taught for years. He'd be great for this men's class. And you just start to have that. And Bill would experience a calling right there in the business meeting. He's like, I didn't plan on doing this. But hearing the affirmation from your peers, you can easily hear God's voice as well. Have you seen that happen at where you're serving with volunteers?
Absolutely. We, especially in light of Vacation Bible School, we have an unusual amount of volunteers, and I'm so grateful for that. But we see people coming in because their friends have brought them in, right? Other people have suggested names, and we reach out to them and bring them in, and they have the time of their lives.
Lauren, how long have you been in your role at First Baptist Bowling Green?
I have been here for nearing 3.5 years.
Okay, and Pastor Jeff has been there, what, 5 or 6 years?
I believe he's in his 9th year.
Oh, okay, longer than that. What are a couple things that you noticed when you first got there about the children's ministry? Some of the strengths maybe that you saw when you first showed up, and then what's something that you observed that, okay, this is going to be an area that needs attention? Does anything come to mind? And I'm thinking about that children's minister or a volunteer who's the first thing they have to do is to assess the current reality. How are things now? What's something you saw that was healthy, and what was something you saw that could use some improvement?
So one thing that especially I noticed during Sunday school hour is that there wasn't necessarily a consistency with curriculum.
Okay.
And so some of the teachers were doing one curriculum, some were doing another, some were supplementing their own curriculum with something else that maybe they had chosen. And we just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same lesson, the same wavelength, going to the same depth with their lesson, depending on their age. And so I brought in a consistency to the curriculum that the teachers were using for that. In addition to that, we incorporated a kids choir that hadn't necessarily been meeting consistently, but we started bringing that in on Wednesday night. And then gradually we've added in missions on Wednesday night to make sure that the kids are getting that Great Commission content in their lives. That's what we've all been called to do. And I think a lot of children's ministries skip that part, and that's one of the most crucial parts. Absolutely. And so bringing that in was really important for our context as well.
So security is a big issue in any ministry in a church, and security at lots of levels. It's certainly a big issue with children's ministries. What are some ways that you've tried to, or what can any church do to make sure their children's ministry is a safe and secure place?
Absolutely. We want kids to feel safe. We want this to be the safe place where they know that they don't have to worry. They can just focus on being a kid and focus on learning. And so one of the first things that you can do are background checks. If you're not doing background checks in any ministry in the church where minors are being worked with, you need to implement those now. So background checks are number one. Maybe you've got somebody who wants to volunteer that's been at the church for a while, but you don't have a relationship with them. You don't know them really well. Bring in reference checks and interviews. Those are totally acceptable ways to get somebody started who wants to get plugged in. You also want to evaluate your space. Just look around. Is it safe? Is there more than one entrance? Can somebody come in undetected to the space? Do we lock the doors at a certain time? Is there an emergency plan if something were to happen, whether it's weather related or something else? We want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So training our volunteers as to what those plans are, what those expectations are, what the policies are. A lot of safety is just communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. Very helpful things to think about. You also are trying to create an atmosphere of welcoming for the children and for their families, a sense of belonging. How do you do that in children's ministry?
I'd say the first step is know their name.
Mm-hmm.
If you can remember a kid's name when they walk in on a Sunday or a Wednesday, their face will absolutely light up. So I would encourage you. Some people will say that they are not name people. Become a name person.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out ways, write down notes, do something that will help you remember what their name is. Give them a side hug, give them a high five. That's part of safety, making sure that you know the healthy boundaries for physical touch in this context. But tell them that you missed them if they've been gone. Making sure that maybe you've got some kids in your ministry that are just really good at helping other kids feel welcome. Have them ready to go. If a visitor walks in, I'm going to take you over to this kid, and they are going to show you where the craft table is. They're going to introduce you to some friends. It's going to be great. But having those plans in place. And then outside the church, if you've got time to go to a game, go to a recital for one of your kids, ask their parents for their schedule and go to those things. It means the world to them that you took even more time out of your day to go cheer them on.
And Lauren, all of that is a gospel ministry. Everything you're describing is receiving people, welcoming people, greeting people in a Christ-honoring way, that you're making it easier for those children to hear and respond to the gospel at some point in their life. Sometimes anyone who works with children may encounter children suffering from some sort of trauma or even abuse. How should a church handle that when there's a suspicion or when they see something that's clearly not right in the life of a child?
Sure. I hate that that's the world we live in, but we do need to have a plan for those moments. And I will say that the first step is don't freak out.
Yeah.
Have a plan and know that trauma is absolutely awful, but you don't need to bring more attention to it than there already is. So pause and breathe and pray and then proceed with what needs to be the next step. You want to love on those families, but you need to know how to love on those families. If a child has experienced trauma, a side hug might not be what they need.
Right.
That might be the opposite of what they need. So figuring out what that family needs and be consistent with it, be the safe place, be the ones that want to know them and that want to minister to them, and make sure they know it. Many churches, including my own, we don't have a licensed counselor on staff. And so we make sure that people know that if they want counseling, they should not come to us, but they can come to us in order to get connected with a biblically based licensed counselor who can help them through their experiences.
And what a great place to supplement your own training by bringing in an outside expert to talk about handling children who have recognizing some signs of trauma in a child's life and how to minister appropriately to a child who's experienced trauma. Well, we're in a new generation coming up, the Generation Alpha, which I have no idea what that means, but I'm trusting that you do. So what are they like and how are they different from past generations, Lauren?
So Gen Alpha, these are the kids who are born between the years of 2010 and 2024. And these are a majority of the kids in our elementary right now and early teen years. And here's some quick takes of what describes this generation. So they are completely digital, as I'm sure you have noticed. They can probably navigate our phones better than we can, if we're honest. We could probably give them to a 3-year-old who isn't even born in that age grade, and they could probably navigate it better too. But their parents are millennials, which would be my age group. And, these kids are experiencing a whole new identity, a whole new understanding of relationships. Statistics now say that 50% of millennial marriages end in divorce.
Wow. And
that is mind-boggling to think about. So these kids have parents who are in that age group. These kids it's estimated that they will be the most educated group, that they will be the ones who finish college degrees. They stay in college the longest, doing those long study programs. And they, because of that, will live at home longer. So parents, you're welcome if that is your child. The shortest attention span is definitely these kids. If you think about it, these are the kids who have grown up watching reels on Facebook and Instagram. They watch TikTok, and half of those are 30 seconds or less. And so their attention span is very quick. They have the most global influence. Just look at their smartphone. If they need to know something, they can find that information in a snap. And, they also have global influence coming at them from everywhere else. They will find information from a million different places, whether it's a true source or not, but they will find some information. They struggle with identity. Just look at the world around us and all of the different identities that have started coming into play now. These kids need to know what the Bible says about who they are and who made them and how they were made, and that they are loved the way that they are. They were made on purpose, for a purpose. The other thing is they're searching for and ready to live their truth, right? It doesn't matter what the Bible says is their truth. They're going to find their truth, and that's the one they're going to choose to live. So it's definitely a new generation, but God has special plans for them, I know.
Absolutely. And good for you, Lauren, focusing this season of your life on that, and as long as the Lord leads you that way, to this group and any group of children that's coming through. So specifically to that end, knowing not only their truth but truth, how do you try to share the gospel with a child? And I mean you personally, like how do you, when you have an opportunity to talk to a child about Jesus, what are a couple of things that guide you in that conversation, and how do you go at it?
So we like to use the 3 circles here.
Okay.
It's very simple. If you've never used it, I would encourage you to. You can find all sorts of videos on YouTube of people who are using the 3 circles to share. My favorite ones are the ones where kids are sharing the gospel. Okay. They're sharing the 3 circles. It is a simple method that you can use, that you can teach your kids so that they can become Great Commission kids who also share the gospel with those around them. I think that's important, is to make sure that they have something tangible that they can do. One thing that we did for Vacation Bible School training last summer is we got these 3 circles bracelets. You can get these from the North American Mission Board website. Yep. And we gave these to all of our leaders, and they were always prepared at any moment during Vacation Bible School and in the months leading up to it to be able to share the gospel with anyone they met at any opportunity that they had. And so it's a great way to teach kids to share the gospel as well, and a simple one that your adults won't necessarily feel that they can't handle.
So, Lauren, I'm experiencing something on my end of this call that my volume has just completely gone out. So I'm going to keep messing with that on my end to try and reconnect with you there. So I may not be able to, but I'm going to keep asking you questions. I can see your lips moving and trusting. Okay. And I'm hearing you again now. All right. So let's. What advice do you have to a new children's ministry leader, or possibly a frustrated children's ministry leader? What would you say to maybe encourage someone else in this work?
Oh, man. One of the prayers that I keep with me all the time is, Lord, help me do this ministry with you and not just for you.
That's really good.
It is so easy in ministry to just let ministry take over. And we aren't very good at saying no to things, or at least I'm not. And sometimes you can't say no to things. But to make sure that you know why you're doing what you're doing, so that you don't end up burnt out with a smile pasted to your face, but you don't actually feel any joy with what you're doing, right? We want to be people who are doing what we're doing because God called us to do it. And we can trust him. He will give us the energy. He will give us the stamina. He will give us everything that we need to be able to keep going. But we've got to do it with him and not just for him.
Yeah, that's really great advice, remembering who we serve and and His power at work in us. We're not doing this in our own power, but Jesus lives in us and works through us. Lauren, you're going to be speaking at our Sunday School Matters in 3 locations. You're also going to be involved in the Vacation Bible School Clinic. I would encourage anyone to come and listen to you. You obviously love what you do, and you do it with a passion and a great deal of wisdom, and you're doing a super job. And so I think folks will have a lot to learn. I want to spend the remainder of our time talking about leadership. So from your last answer, moving to being an effective leader just requires a lot of time and energy, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, in every way. How do you take care of yourself while you're consistently pouring yourself out to help others? What do you do to take care of you?
You know, I learned this a little bit from my dad because he worked in a situation. He was an insurance agent, and so work had to stop when he left the office because everything was at the office. And so I try when I'm able to leave things at the office and to spend my time at home, just at home. Now, obviously, you're going to get text messages and emails and phone calls and need to go to the hospital and do those things. But when it's possible, take advantage of those times to just be you and get to not necessarily turn on your 100% minister face and just breathe and spend time with the Lord and take a breath, take a beat in order to be able to be refilled and go back out and do what God's called you to do.
And Lauren, in children's ministry, you have so many volunteers that you're working with. You also have parents, and you know, for them, it may pop into their mind on Saturday morning at 7:30. Hey, there's a form I'm supposed to be filling out. I'll just text Lauren. What have you done to honor not only your role in those you serve, but also to set some healthy boundaries that you're really not available 24/7 unless there's a real emergency? Any tips there that have been effective for you in these 10 years of ministry leadership?
You know, I would love to say that I figured that out, but I will be honest in saying if somebody texts me at 7:30 on a Saturday morning with a question, I'm probably going to answer it. And the reason why is because my brain goes a mile a minute, and I will forget that I was supposed to answer it on Monday.
There you go.
And so I go ahead and answer it just so they have their answer, and I don't have to think about it.
Well, you're teaching children a biblical worldview. You're trying to help them develop a love for God's word. But what about you in the Bible? So if you think about biblical leaders, a leader that you've seen in the Bible, is there anyone that comes to mind that you really admire from Scripture or that you've learned from a biblical leader?
You know, one of the leaders that pops in my mind is Stephen.
Okay.
He gave so much of himself. When you read through his story in the book of Acts, and he maybe didn't start out a leader, but he was appointed. You know, he was sent out, and it was time to go. And when you're sent out, to a degree, you become a leader to somebody. Somebody is following you. Somebody is listening to you. And so listening to Stephen's his declaration of his faith in the Lord, and his declaration that God was good no matter what happened to him, that it was worth it no matter what happened. That has always been something that has stuck with me, and especially in my time overseas, I clung to that, to Stephen's testimony, and reminded myself that it was worth it then, and it is worth it now.
Lauren, the first level of leadership, or first level of leadership in any, whether it's ministry or something else, is that you have to lead yourself before you can lead others. What's something that you had to learn about yourself to be a more effective ministry leader?
Something I had to learn about myself. I had to learn, this is about myself, but this is also about others. I had to learn that not everybody was as excited as me. I know, and I had to learn that the difficult way. But that, you know, I had to learn to share with people as much of that passion and that love for children's ministry as I could, but to understand that God created everyone differently, and that's a beautiful and great thing. And I had to understand how to help people use what God had given them to be effective leaders. And so learning about myself was that I'm incredibly excited about everything, but learning about others, that not everyone is made the same way, and God did that on purpose.
That's excellent. That keeps you from being frustrated, and also from frustrating others. Outstanding. And this, you may have already answered this, but is there a leadership lesson 10 years somewhere along the line that you kind of had to learn the hard way, that you just had to go through it and learn something that has really stuck with you?
You know, something that I had to learn the hard way was that you have to build habits at the beginning.
Okay.
You know, we jump into ministry and it's a mile a minute all the time, or at least in my context it is. And so I had to learn how to build those foundational habits, but I'm not sure I did it in the right order. So if you've ever seen that object lesson with the jar and the rocks and the sand, where you've got to put the large things in first, the important things, right? You've got to put your relationship with the Lord and your family and your health and all of those things in first. And then when you pour the small things, the sand in, you know, everything has a place. But if you try to do it the other way around, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And so making sure that you put all of your priorities in place, build that routine in which you're going to follow the Lord, in which you're going to read His word, and you're going to spend time in prayer. Put all of that in place first, and then fill everything else in, because you're going to fill up your schedule. It's a matter of what you're going to fill it with, and if there's going to be time for what needs to be there.
That's outstanding advice. Last question, Lauren. If you could give one piece of advice to younger leaders, and you're a young leader yourself, but you have a lot of experience as well, what would you say to someone just getting started? What advice would you give?
I would say buckle up, because if you let God do what He wants to do, He can just take you on such an amazing journey. I think a lot of people, you know, if we choose to say no to what He's asking of us, we're placing a limit on ourselves. Yep. He's going to keep working whether He uses us or not, right? But to be able to be obedient to whatever it is that He's asking us to do, to take the next step and take the next step and take the next step of obedience, He can do amazing things in your life. You just got to be willing to say yes. And again, that's another thing I learned the hard way, is I've said yes and yes and yes, but I didn't always say it, you know, nicely. It was usually with gritting my teeth at the same time. But when we say yes to God, He's gonna work, and we're gonna see so many more blessings than we could have ever imagined. So say yes when you can.
Lawrence, what I observed from you and the time I've known you and through this interview, your mother made it easy for you to say yes to God's calling on your life because you served alongside of her and you watched her minister. But I'm seeing that you'll make it easy for many others. There'll be students who've grown up under your ministry. There'll be adults that have worked with you, that when God's call comes on their life, they'll see your passion, your energy, and the way you go at it. It'll make it much easier for them to say yes to God's calling. So thank you for your leadership at First Baptist Bowling Green. Thank you for being involved in serving Kentucky Baptist. And thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on both Apple and Android devices. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches, for churches, to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program, which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership Lessons.